So nobody likes paying taxes, especially when you think they're being wasted or not going to good things. So should you pay taxes? Well, today we're going to talk about how Jesus answered that question. Jesus said, yes, pay your taxes. Good morning and welcome to 755 Live. For about 5 minutes, you'll hear all about easy to remember soundbite versions of what Jesus said. And the point is to help you experience life to the fullest the Jesus way. Today's Jesus Said comes from Matthew 22, verses 17 through 22, and we're going to be reading from the New Living Translation. These are the Pharisees talking to Jesus in verse 17. Now tell us what you think about this. Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Now, before we go on to verse 18, this was a trap. They were trying to catch Jesus and get him against the Roman Empire and vice versa. Verse 18, but Jesus knew their evil motives. You hypocrites, he said, why are you trying to trap me? Here, show me the coin used for the tax. And when they handed him a Roman coin, he asked, whose picture and title are stamped on it? Caesar's, they replied. Well then, he said, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give to God what belongs to God. His reply amazed them, and they went away. Now, this was a trap. The Pharisees had met together in Matthew 22:15 to plot how to trap Jesus into saying something that he would be arrested for. And this was a lose-lose scenario that they were trying to create, a trick question. Because Caesar was bad. We were just talking about that this morning. Caesar actually declared himself God. The whole Roman Empire was built on the fact that the Roman emperor was deity. And Jesus, instead of falling into this trap, he responded in such a brilliant way. In fact, this particular story is one of those things where and read it again because the way that Jesus answered this question, just pure genius. I mean, to take this coin and to say whose picture is on it and say give to Caesar what Caesar and give to God what is God's. I mean, this to me is one of the most compelling reasons why I believe in Jesus, even more than some of the miracles and the resurrection from the dead. I mean, this was just such incredible logic and just pure genius. But the question today is, does this principle apply to us? Well, scripturally, if it was just this one thing, maybe, but the Bible tells us that in the mouth of two or three witnesses, that every word should be established. So how did Jesus' own disciples respond to this same principle? Let's look at Romans 13, 1 through 2. It says that everyone must submit to governing authorities. Now remember, the governing authorities in this day were the Roman rulers who believed that the emperor was God and they were evil. And Paul says, for all authority comes from God, and those in positions of authority have been placed there by God. So anyone who rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and they will be punished. Now, unpacking this, we say, well, but our government is bad. Well, this was the Roman Empire that eventually would execute Paul, and it was not a good government. And Paul yet says, almost the same as Jesus, render unto Caesar those things that are Caesar. We find Peter, the rebel disciple, writing this in 1 Peter 2, 13 through 17. For the Lord's sake, for whose sake? For God's sake, submit to all human authority, whether the king as head of state or the officials he has appointed, for the king has sent them to punish those who do wrong and to honor those who do right. It is God's will that your honorable lives should silence those ignorant people who make foolish accusations against you. For you are free, yet you are God's slaves. So don't use your freedom as an excuse to do evil. Respect everyone and love the family of believers. Fear God and respect the king? And this was a guy who said he was God. Do you know how bad the king was at this time? You think our politicians are bad? They're Boy Scouts compared to the Roman emperor and the rulers that he appointed in this day. So this is still a trap for us today. Can you imagine Paul saying, "Oh, way to go, Caesar. Look at those idiots in Rome. The Roman Empire is a swamp." You see, we live in a different kingdom. We follow Jesus. He is our Lord and Master, not government. But we also submit to those over us because we're submitting to Jesus. Now, we don't break God's standards because we obey God and not man. But if those that are over us ask us to do something and it doesn't break God's command, we rebel against God if we don't submit and honor them. This principle wasn't just about taxes. It's about all things. I mean, how do we treat the speed limits? What about city ordinances? What about seat belts? Don't fall for the trap that hypocrites are trying to set. How do we respond? 1 Peter 2:15 says it's God's will that your honorable lives should silence those who make foolish accusations against you. And sometimes that's as simple as, yes, pay your taxes. That's what Jesus said. How can you put that into action today? Thank you so much for listening. If this is meaningful to you, it really means a lot to me if you like it, if you share it, if you comment. Good morning, Jennifer. Glad to see you today. I really appreciate all the support, and I hope you have an amazing day, and I hope this time together has helped you live life to the fullest, the Jesus way. And remember, follow Jesus today. Love first.